In this lesson, we're going to explore 3D camera tracking in After Effects. So we've got our source footage here. Let's go ahead and drag that down into a new composition. And if we scrub through, we can see that it's a pretty nice drone shot of some really beautiful mountains. And we're just going to make a simple pass on this. We're going to let After Effects do the heavy lifting. So with our workspace set to motion tracking, you can see your tracker window over here. And instead of, in our previous lesson, we used track motion. And what that did is it tracked an object in the scene. Today we're going to track the camera. What it's going to do is it's going to go through, it's going to analyze your footage, and it's going to replicate the camera motion of the actual camera that filmed this and create a 3D scene that replicates that. So we'll go ahead and just say track camera. Now when we do this, it'll analyze in the background. You'll see the initializing coming up over here in your effects control, and it'll take a little bit of time to run through that. So we'll let it run through, and it'll count up and give you a countdown to how long it's going to take. So now that the analysis is complete, you can see that it's created a number of motion tracking points on our shot. Let's go ahead and zoom in and take a look. Any of these red points are points that are not good data. Any of the green points are going to be the best data. Anything in between is going to be kind of on the spectrum of that. But as a whole, it gives you a really good approximation of the camera. You can see if you click under the advanced, you can see that the average error, anything less than a pixel is pretty good. So we'll just go ahead and leave it at 0.98 pixels. You can always go ahead and do a deeper dive if you needed more accuracy. Once that's done, up here under our effects control, we'll just say create camera, and you'll see in the scene it creates a 3D tracker camera. Now if we split our view into two views, we can see that the camera is going to move in accordance with the information that we got from that shot. However, the source footage itself is still a 2D object, so it's not going to register in the scene. We're going to leave it that way. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Layer, New. We're going to just create a text element. I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to type Discover. So you can have it say whatever you want. So we'll just go ahead and change it to something a little bit more readable. We'll do Arial Black, and then again, Layer, Transform, Center Anchor Point. Now, once you've created this text, we have to make that a 3D object to register in the scene. So we'll just right click on Discover and we'll say 3D layer, or in your columns, you can go over and you click the 3D layer. Now you can see it moves it slightly. And if we scrub through the camera, you can see that it moves as though it's sort of right in front of the camera. So what we need to do is we need to think about this in kind of a 3D sense, and we need to push this object far, far back. So let me go ahead and do that. As I push this back away from me, if I open up my transform, and I look at my position, you can see that the Z position is changing rapidly. You can hold down Shift and you can scrub and it'll greatly change. You can also hold down Control for a little bit more precision. Holding down Shift and scrubbing, I want to set that to be about 22,000 away. And then I'm going to adjust the scale accordingly. Let's just go ahead and set the scale to about 2,000 and see how that looks. Okay, so even though that text looks the same as it did, we're just going to go ahead and scrub, and you can see now it looks like that text is much further away. So what I want to do now is I'm just going to angle that in the scene. So let's just go ahead and drag it over, and I'm going to kind of place it so that it's kind of on this mountain. Now there's a couple different ways to do it. You can change the orientation or the rotation over here in your channels, or you have a handy dandy little manipulator tool you can click on. You can see you can just click on the balls in the circles, and it allows you to change the placement and the rotation of that object. So I'm just going to rotate this to be facing a little bit more along the view of the mountains, and I'm just going to move this up. So now if we scrub through, we can see that that follows the mountains. Now if you're in 2025 or less, you can actually apply layer styles here. So if I go to Layer, Layer Styles, and Drop Shadow, one of the things you'll notice is it's not going to appear. The reason for that is in 2026 they made a change, so it no longer registers 2D. So now that I've created that text, I can make it look a little bit nicer and more integrated into the scene. Under modes here, we're just going to go to mode. We're going to change this to overlay. And then we're going to go to layer, layer styles. We'll add a little bit of a drop shadow. Let's open up our drop shadow window. We're just going to go ahead and increase the distance just to see the shadow a little bit better. We'll change the size to be a little bit smaller, and we'll change the opacity to be a little bit greater. Change the angle here so that that shadow looks like it's happening behind it. And then if we scrub through, we can see that that text now follows the mountain range. It looks like it's integrated in the scene. If it's kind of looks like it's cutting through the mountain, you can move it forward just a little bit. And you could just play around with the positioning of the object. If you look at the transforms on mine, the transforms in position are about 600, negative 260, and about 22,000. The scale is about 2,000. And then the orientations are about 350, 320, and 328. So you can approximate those numbers, and it gives you a pretty good view. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add one more effect to it that kind of blends this in. So I'm just going to go to my Windows and I'm going to go to Effects and Presets. It's going to open up this window and I can just go ahead and drag it over here, get a little bit, and then I'm going to go to one view. So I'll collapse it down to one view. And then I'll just go ahead and get rid of this. And I'm going to go to Animation Presets, Text, Animate In, and if I scrub down, you can see Fade Up Characters. So I'm just going to take that Fade Up Characters, I'm just going to drag that down onto my Discover text. So you can see by default, it kind of reads out the letters. Just open that up and I'll go to my animator. I'll go to my range selector and I'm just going to go ahead and drag that out so that fade in is a little bit longer and starts a little bit further in the frame. So now we'll just scrub through and we can see here it starts to print out. If Discover gets cut off like that, you can always drag it over more into the frame. And so now you can see Discover sort of prints out there. That's a completion of the assignment. All that's left to do is to render out the movie and turn it in.